Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your weekly look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
This episode is brought to you by the upcoming Untappd Beer Festival. That's right, we're going to San Diego's Petco Park, and we're going to be drinking real beers with real people on October 1st and 2nd, bringing more than 70 breweries with us, including some Untappd royalty like Drecker and El Segundo and Pizza Port and more. VIP access is going to include beers from Horace Aged Ales, Tripping Animals, and Vitamin C Brewing. This is going to be really excited. VIP and general admission tickets are still available if you visit festivals.untappd.com. For more info, use the coupon code DSPodcast. You'll see that right on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. That's going to save you $10 off of VIP tickets and $5 off of general admission. So I'm basically offering you free money to go drink beer. If you can rationalize it that way, use the coupon code DSPodcast in all caps, and we'll see you in America's finest city with some of the world's finest beers on October 1st and 2nd. Also, if you want to hear this message again, like and subscribe. Follow us on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. You'll hear new things from John and Harrison and Untappd every Wednesday. Speaking of Harrison, he's all ready to go.
To the window, to the wall, to the port. Is that how that song goes? Yeah, that's not important. Yeah, I don't know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. To the past. What is important are porters. So a style that in recent years I've heard referred to as that other dark beer. To me, it feels like craft beer hit a fork in the road about a decade ago. Before us all lay the path of the porter and the path of the stout. And we, the consumers, brewers, the blog, everyone in the craft beer world didn't walk, but ran down that dark, windy, roasty path of the stout. And what followed was a decade of wild innovation leading us to today, where I can consume at any given moment a barrel-aged, fruited breakfast stout infused with lactose and cake and get my weekly calories all in one can of beer and have 70 different breweries at my local bottle shop offer me their take on that stout. So how did we get here? And really, why did we get here? Opting overall for the more roasty, coffee-nosed dark beer that is the stout. To answer that, we have to jump back in time, even further, to the Industrial Revolution in London. The porter, which actually came first before the stout, named after the porters in Covent Garden that really enjoyed them, was being experimented with by brewers using this newly created brewing technology, thanks to that Industrial Revolution making stronger, or stout, porters, which eventually just became known as stouts. And they took off in popularity even more than their older, maybe wiser and better-looking brother, the porter, did. And therein lies our answer, John. The rise of the stout is just another classic example of little brother syndrome. If you're not familiar with little brother syndrome, that's because I just made it up. But you probably know the concept. Big brothers, right? They come in, learn all the ropes, get in trouble all the time, but then work hard to figure out ways of the world so they avoid trouble next. And then they kindly pass down this knowledge to their younger sibling who, instead of being gracious after gifting the cheat codes of life, gives older brother the old metaphorical, ha, see ya, and proceeds to use and abuse his unearned knowledge to excel in everything the older brother attempted at doing, well, barely even trying, and never gets in trouble because, well, I mean, at that point, the parents are all burned out after years of punishing the older brother. That lucky son. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting carried away.
Got some waffles on the show.
Indeed. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I forgot you all are still here, but don't worry. I'm not bitter, although I hope the porter we're going to have in a little bit is, at least slightly. But thanks for letting me vent and saving some time in this week's therapy session. Let's get back to this beer. So I hope you'll join us by hitting pause on your stout button and instead celebrate the fruits of older brother porter's labor today with us. We've got a classic porter from Berkshire Brewing Company out of Massachusetts lined up, and another Untappd badge to the port that stouts can have no part of. Finally, John, save me from this existential crisis I'm standing on the edge of here.
The answer is cat or jump, depending on which crisis you're having. But I'm happy to jump in and save you from the porter. Little brother, Harrison, are you an older brother?
Well, how'd you guess? Little mate. Yes, I am, John.
Your diagnosis was spot on, and I could relate with all of that. If my younger brother is listening, you know what we're talking about.
Right.
Anyways, good point. The badge that we're focusing and featuring on this episode is To the Port. And Harrison and I have already done a feature on a badge where you had to drink a beer at a port or a harbor. Correct. This is different. Even though the name first made me think we're going out to the sea again. No, this is about drinking a porter. As Harrison's alluded to, when you earn this badge on Untappd, you'll get the hint. Dating back to the 18th century, porters remain an extremely popular style to this day. I'd make the argument it's almost time for a rewrite there, because stouts, as Harrison has alluded to, have started to kind of take over. In order to earn this badge, you have to drink 5 beers on Untappd labeled as a porter. So this could be a coffee porter, an American, a Baltic, a double porter, Imperial porter. As long as it says porter, you're generally pretty safe. They're going to be taking one up towards earning or leveling up this badge. Yeah. And Harrison already kind of explained most of the history on these beers. They emerged in England in the late early 1800s, kind of becoming popular as a working class beer. Yeah. In around London at the time, you were a boatman, you were a punter, or you were a porter. Nobody knows what those jobs are today. Yep. I think a punter is a rugby player or a football over here in the States. But either way, these were the beers that you would drink after a long shift, and you'd have a porter named after the working class. Perhaps the style spread, came to America. We changed it. There became a Baltic porter. They got stronger. Then the stouts happened. So the porter has had a rise and kind of a fall, I think, as we've seen craft stouts happen. And Harrison and I are really excited to bring back some excitement in the porter. And what are we bringing to the show today, Harrison, that's going to get me excited about this sort of overlooked dark beer brother?
Yeah. So, and I should say, I mean, obviously we'll talk in a moment. There are, if you're at home going, oh, what about sweet baby Jesus? What about all these other crazy porters? There are some, but I don't think anyone would argue there are just way more stouts out there today. So don't calm down. I hear you. I do know that there are wild porters, but I think, again, we can all agree stouts are the thing to make crazy right now in the dark beer world. So I said, let's stop all that today and let's jump into a really classic porter, not even try to find like the dessert stouts counterpart in the porter world. Nope, we could probably do it, but we're going to enjoy instead Drayman's Porter from Berkshire Brewing Company, which is delicious. It's one of my favorites, as you guys probably know by now. I kind of started originally from New England, so this beer was everywhere, but it's classified as a porter on Untappd. It's a 6.2%, 36 IBUs, so that's great. More than 7,000 check-ins on Untappd as well, and carries a 3.77 rating, which is awesome. And from the brewery, it is a very well-balanced and full-bodied dark ruby brown ale. Drayman's Porter is slightly sweet with notes of chocolate malt and mocha, married in a delicate hop bitterness and flavor. Excuse me. It's a complex aroma and smooth taste and body, all that a dark beer should be. Enjoyed by itself or the hearty meal, this robust porter will satisfy. Don't be afraid of the dark. And we aren't. We're pros of all things in the dark, mostly beers. But I'm going to pour mine. I'm going to pour mine. John, if you already dove it in for a dip, what do you know?
Yeah, we are pros of everything that happens in the dark. That's a different podcast that we do. But right. So first sips on this beer is, I expected the body to be a little bit lighter or thinner than some of the big stouts I've drank recently. Right. And it might be, but it doesn't leave anything to be desired. The flavor, I would put this as like a more traditional style porter. We're not going into the realm of like vanilla, sweet baby Jesus. Yeah. It's got a little bitterness, but if I had to give it a flavor profile, it'd be almost like mocha, or like there's a little bitter coffee chocolate that's happening.
Yeah, I'm getting a ton of bitter coffee chocolate. That's and there's a nice. I'm getting my wish. I hope for a bitter porter. There's bitterness that kind of comes. It's fun when you drink dark beers that have a nice hop profile to it. You can sometimes get like that bitter coffee flavor, where the bitterness comes from the roasted malt, but also the hops a little bit. And it's really, we've talked about this before, but it's kind of hard to see like where does the bitterness from roasting the malt end and the bitterness from the hop profile begin. It's kind of hard to tell, but I get it's those cool fruity chocolate notes almost in here that you get from certain coffees. This is different than I remember, but it's quite good. It's got a nice. It's just chocolatey and mocha-y, and it's. I'm gonna chug it. I know I am, but I'll try not to.
After I took my first sip and I went back to smell this beer again, that's immediately when I got some of those kind of fruit notes you were talking about. What are you picking out of here, Harrison, as you go back into the froth?
Yeah. It's almost like you get that. Again, it's subtle, but it feels like chocolate covered raspberries almost for like a minute. There's like a little bit of that, like, or maybe even boysenberry, some kind of darker fruit. Just for a second though, but it's really chocolatey. It's very like bittersweet kind of baker's chocolate almost, the way it is sitting on my tongue right now, which is awesome. And you can tell, I mean, as the brewery said, I mean, hearty meal or not. I mean, it goes well by itself. It kind of is a meal in a glass, which a lot of dark beers, or maybe certain specific dark beers, have earned that as a reputation for a while. I can get that here. 6.2%, which is nice. But it's this is great. But again, it's one of those beers where it's like perfect. I can drink this. A lot's happening. It will change as it warms up, but it's not overwhelming. I'm not like, where's the vanilla? Where's the wood? I can't taste the marshmallow. I know I'm really knocking at chunked beers, but at the end of the week, my brain just wants to go, I get you, not going to scavenger hunt inside something. That's just me. I just want to be able to go, got it.
I want to say that, and I want to, I want to be kind of like a bitter old man with you on this one. But whenever I drink a dark beer, I'm really hoping that there's like a half a jar of Peter Pan in there mixed with some Oreo crumbles. Yeah. I want it to be thick and desserty, but this beer isn't that. Would it be good with marshmallow? Probably, but it isn't in there. I think most of the flavors come from the malt. And for me, the big is 6.2, which is, I guess, by American standards, like low ABV. But I can't imagine getting off of a long shift of punting in 1800s London before there was air conditioning. Not that it's hot in London, but like finishing up my day of work and then going to crush a few of these. There's a lot of flavor in here to have 4 or 5 of these, where you would think a brown ale or maybe a light beer, even though they barely existed back then, would have been more quaffable.
Yeah, great point. And right. It's funny. And obviously, I mean, I think, if you read a little bit about the history of the porters, it kind of it started as like kind of people bar backs or blending beers behind the bar to kind of make a darker, browner beer. So this had like an interesting inception, what we're drinking today. And I would guess that, and maybe we'll ponder a little bit more on this in a bit, but the porters of like the early 1800s probably weren't this strong. But I mean, I don't know. I am just guessing. But what I can say for certain is that, so we're drinking obviously Draymond's Porter today, which has 7,000 check-ins on Untappd. This beer, though, is also the base beer for Berkshire Brewing Company's Coffee House Porter that has almost 40,000 check-ins. So they kind of like took this beer and the coffee notes we're enjoying and grabbed some of Dean's Beans Organic Coffee, which is a local roastery up in New England and Massachusetts.
Shout out to Dean's Beans.
Shout out to Dean's Beans, and dropped it in this exact beer. and made Coffee House Porter, which is not surprisingly, again, knowing how the craft beer world seems to have an insatiable, thirst for like crazy flavors in their darker beers. They went that route and said, cool, let's add coffee to this and quench that thirst. So if you guys are drinking this or your hands on it or like, I like coffee porters, perfect. Berkshire Brewing Company's got you covered.
And honestly, I get a lot of coffee in here. I mean,
yeah,
I think you should. It's probably hard. Can you think of a dark beer that doesn't have a lot of coffee flavor in it? Or even, maybe I should say not a lot, but like a dark beer that doesn't taste a little bit like coffee?
Yeah, most of them, again, roasted malts, they're roasted, coffee beans are roasted. Like really what we're tasting in both coffee and beer like this is like the roasting process. It's just kind of, easy to recognize it in coffee. So we kind of default to that as saying it's got coffee notes. I think it's really like that roasting. It's just tasting the roast, if that makes any sense. But to answer your question, when I am hunting for that, I go right towards like Schwartz beers or dark lagers, black lagers, where it's going to be crisper and smoother, and not necessarily have less roasted malts in it, or especially malts in those beers, but just the lagering process gives it time to mellow out. The yeast is going to do different things. It's like I said earlier, a lot of that, like the bitterness of the hops with the roasted malt, it makes it feel more like coffee. Like there is a coffeeness to this that takes a lot of coffee, obviously is bitter. When that goes away with like a Schwartz beer that aren't hopped to the same rate as a porter, and then also pulls away from some of the kind of coffee experience of it. So there's a lot of things going on in the darker lagers of the world where you can get like, because again, like a great Schwartz beer will have like a quick coffee note in it for me, but it really just fades into just like a nice lager much quicker than this beer is, where it's almost feeling like the coffee is building in my mouth every time I take a sip of this guy. It's getting more intense, which is what you would expect.
As you ran through that, I came up with a great would you rather for a little bit later in the show if we get time for it.
Good.
But I did want to, while we're talking about this beer, before we get into the badge highlights, before we started recording tonight, you were talking about Berkshire Brewing's, I'm going to say marketing strategy, and I'm going to hope you'll evaluate on that a little bit for people listening.
Yeah, I mean, so again, kind of started my beer career in New England, and the first time I saw Berkshire Brewing Company was in like every state store, where you can buy alcohol in Connecticut. Every single one had a Berkshire Brewing Company either stand or refrigerator that was branded Berkshire Brewing Company, full of Berkshire beers. And as like a young beer consumer, I was like, this must be the best beer in the world. They have their own fridges. It's always cold. And I mean, I really think they did it. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, they obviously care about their beer. They care about freshness and quality. They want their beer to be cold. I don't know what came first, if they were like, we just need to invest in fridges so that our beer always tastes great, or if they were like, hey, if we always have the coldest beer in the store, we're going to sell out of it. Maybe a little marketing, a little production team meeting happened, and they landed on, let's just get fridges everywhere. But they're still around. Like if you go into almost any Connecticut beer store, chances are there's some old, now probably loud, because the capacitors are wearing out or whatever, fridge in there that's branded Berkshire Brewing. But it was such a memorable experience. And I feel like I even remember like going into a couple different beer stores and always seeing it and be like, I got to try this. I can't believe they have their own fridge. They also were very big into the 22-ounce bottles of Bombers when Bombers were everywhere. So that's the first time I had Draymond's. I've never had actually in a can until tonight, I don't think. It was 22 ounces. And it was a great price point. It was like $3.99 for any of their Bombers. And I was like, great, I'll grab 5 of these. That's my weekend. I'll see you later. So they're great. I mean, they're really great classic beers like this one that's just like, you want a porter that tastes like a porter? Awesome, drink it. But they have the Brewers Select series that's really cool. They have a hilarious sour series we'll talk about in a little bit. That's the name's amazing, and they're doing everything a great craft brewery should. But yeah, it was just no other brewery in the state in New England, as far as I know, had that approach where you could walk in anywhere and always see a branded fridge and get, oh, cool. If I go to this place, they'll always have cold, fresh Berkshire Brewing. In fact, I'm remembering this last point. They also used to fill up growlers fresh at the brewery and drop those off at the fridges as well. And actually, I think that's why they invested in the fridges first, was we're going to be the only brewery that is sending fresh growlers to package stores for people to buy. That's exactly why. And again, I don't know the why behind that. Why did they decide to do it? And that's really cool and unique. But that was a big part of their early history. Was I could go to a liquor store. I keep saying package store, that's what we call them, but like a liquor store, whatever, and get a growler of beer. And they were easily the first brewery that I remember to do that too. So cool history, doing things you don't really see anyone else doing, and doing them well. And they have for many, many years. Yeah,
they got their start in 1994.
Right.
So there's people listening and drinking their beer that weren't even born. When somebody was running out delivering growlers all across Connecticut, which also sounds like I know, right? Most fun.
That job.
I get nervous carrying one growler home in my car.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So great shout out to the delivery guys, the sales guys at BBC for making that happen. And really just BBC in general for, again, doing their things their own way and making something great for many, many years. That's tough. We've all seen it, kind of the breweries that you like maybe fade away, or, trends change and they decide, that's not for us. And then, 2 years later, they're like, oh, shoot, we missed a big boat. So they're smart. And then they're killing it.
Yeah. Helping. When I think of branded refrigerators in stores, I think of Coca-Cola and Red Bull. So,
right. I know.
The only thing Berkshire didn't do is sponsor the Olympics or create an extreme sport, but maybe it's coming.
That's right.
Berkshire on the moon.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that'd be good. I don't know if it's certainly cold enough in space. They wouldn't need the fridges. So that might save them some overhead, which is exciting.
Coming soon.
Oh, man, this is delicious. All right, cool. So let's talk more about this badge to the port. John, what did you find out about how many people are out there on the same porter train as us? What do we know? What are they drinking?
Yeah, we're going to have to remember when we do the stout badge to compare these numbers. But for the porter, we're a little over 500,000, close to 600,000 unlocks on this badge.
Nice.
So, just strictly based on numbers, probably every Untappd user has checked into a porter, but maybe not 5 different porters, and that's holding some people back. But also, to me, that makes me think there's not a lot of porters to choose from. The stout badge, I expect, is going to be nearly double those unlocks. So I don't know. Let's give porters some love. They're virtually, close cousins. And I'm going to stop preaching about giving porters love. Give them Oreos and bananas. That's what I want. But let's talk about what everyone else on Untappd wants. This actually will help kind of break it down. So the beer that has helped most people unlock this badge, Breckenridge Brewery. Everybody knows this beer, vanilla porter. It's delicious, accurately named. But then right below them is Deschutes Black Butt Porter. So you've got like an adjunct vanilla porter competing with a very traditional one, and then right below that, Founders Porter, which is like a barometer for the style. Founders Porter's outstanding, and then you go into Death by Coconut from Oscar Blues. That beer is incredible. Death by Coconut, then Sweet Baby Jesus, which is peanut butter, then Snowdrift Vanilla from Leinenkugel, and then Boulder Beer makes one called Shake. Have you had that before, Harry?
Yeah, that's great. That's a chocolate porter. Yep, it's delicious and very. I think I remember correctly, pretty well hopped as well. So it's kind of like just like we're drinking tonight. Bitter, grassy, chocolatey porter. It's great.
And then we rounded out with Great Lakes Eddie Fitzgerald, or Edmund Fitzgerald, if you're a fan of boats. Ballast Point's Victory at Sea, and it's the base Victory at Sea, not their coconut or peanut butter, or rum, or any of the variants, unfortunately. And then an Icelandic toasted porter from an Icelandic brewery whose name I'll leave out for posterity's sake. But so I think the traditional style porters are 5 and the adjunct style porters are 5. So we're at like a dead split on Untappd for,
That's nice.
Are you drinking traditional porters or vanilla peanut butter porters? And you know where I want to go with this, but
I know. And
so far,
half of everyone is with you or whatever, at least in their early porter experience. And you always wonder, we can't see it, but I wonder how many of those adjunct infused porters were checked in recently. Probably most of them within the last 5 years or so, where the Breckenridge has been around for a while, whereas I would guess that a lot of those Deschutes check-ins are older, but who knows? But curious to see which way it's going. If I imagine it's the way of the adjunct, but who knows? We'll see.
Speaking of working class porters, there's nothing more popular among the working class than a good wager. Actually, probably should. I don't want to get canceled, but any working class family I've been a member of loves to gamble and bet against each other. Go. Harrison, I'm coming in with this badge. Actually, not as good as I would have assumed. But again, the porter needs more love. I'm at level 9 on this badge, and my most recent unlock came from Oscar Blues Hot Box Coffee Porter. It's an amazing beer and porter, but it was December. So it's been like, 3/4 of a year since I've leveled up this badge. What about you, Harrison?
Once again, John, you are gonna one-up me here. I'm only at level 6. So also thought I need to hold myself to a higher standard in the porter world. I don't want to make excuses, but I do every time I'm low. Where check my check-ins, folks. I'll check in the same porter 90 times, and uniques are what you need to make a difference. So Founders Porter, I was trying to look it up quickly to see how many times I've checked in that beer alone.
Definitely me on drinking in the same beer.
Yeah, I know. Only 4 times for Founders Porter. I felt like there was one that whatever, it doesn't matter. All right. But so, and most recently, Sam Smith's Taddy Porter. So one of the OGs, if you will, one of the original porters, original recipe from Sam Smith themselves. And that was also back in, I think in December or so. So back in the 2 cold weeks we have down here, got my porter on, and cool beer. Very much enjoyed it, as I'm enjoying this one tonight.
And so before I ask, I've got a would you rather that I'm excited to get your feedback on, but I want to ask an Untappd related question because it seems like a good time to do this. When I'm checking into a beer, I'm really only going to check into it. I want to provide a photo because, it has to be provable. But I usually only check into a beer once. And if I drink it again, I don't check into it again unless my ratings have changed. Like if I go back when I hated sours and now I drink the same one and I like it, then I'm going to check it in and I'm going to adjust my rating. But it's rare that I'll check into the same beer time and time again. Mm-hmm. Harrison, what you'll do that more than me. Is there a reason behind that?
I think it used to be if I discovered the same beer in a different format, I would check it in. So like if I had Founders out of the bottle, great. If I found it on cask, I'm checking that in and I'm looking at my bottle notes and then kind of holding that up to the cask version, draft version. That's an easy one if it's a beer that I've had before, but I'm have it off the hand pump or having a nitro version of it or whatever. I'll jump at Untappd and go, ooh, have I had this beer this way? Because that's enough when you change, how it's served to, I think, warrant just a different kind of a pause and go, all right, what's different? Let me look at my past tasting notes, this was Super Rose last time I had it, yada yada. So that's easy. Every time there's a beer presented that I've had before, but in a new way, I'll jump in the check-in. Sometimes it also happens like now I'm thinking about it, I'll drink like my favorite beers around some of my favorite holidays or favorite activities, which I feel like is a good time to check in too. And also sometimes it's a good time to check in just to tag my friends or, whatever, see what they're drinking, because we're all drinking the day before Thanksgiving or, in the States, or watching football games the week between Christmas and New Year's. So there's kind of occasions, universal ones, where checking in, I'm probably drinking a beer I've had before, because I tend to do that again around holidays and stuff. But maybe want to take a picture of the Christmas tree or whatever. Yeah. So, things like that. It's more like, it's not as scientific or whatever. It's more just kind of like, this is a nice moment, and I happen to be drinking this beer again. For Bell's Two Hearted and Sierra Nevada, though, it's kind of just like, I haven't had this in 6 months, and I'm just going to drink it for a whole month, and I'm going to take a lot of pictures. And then I'll go through cycles with those beers because they're some of my favorites. So those are the two I've had the most and checked in the most easily.
I think of all the Untappd users I know or am friends with, which is a lot. Thank you.
Yes.
Of all the people that I know that use Untappd, you do, I think, treat it like a memory bank more than anyone else. I had this beer and so, and like, I love the way that you use Untappd, and I'm going to leave it there, but I like talking about how we use Untappd, and I won't say that you use it better than me, but I am kind of jealous. Anyways, let's pivot away from that. There's therapy later.
That's right.
Harrison, I got a would you rather for you before we get into this week's verified venue, and I think you'll do good with it.
Okay.
We're talking about Dean's Beans, and we were talking about dark beers tasting like coffee. And I started thinking, like, why doesn't Dunkin' Donuts brew a beer? I mean, that would probably sell well. I've seen collaborations. So my question for you is, would you rather drink beers brewed by Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks?
Oh, this is also going to reveal my New England routes.
Or Tim Hortons, maybe.
Right, something. But Dunkin' Donuts easily, and I mean, I know Harpoon did that cool collaboration with them, which I didn't even have, I don't think. But right, I get what you're saying. Actually walk into a Dunkin' Donuts and have a 15-year-old high school kid with his voice cracking hand me a beer. But I'm going Dunkin'. And I'm not saying like, oh, they got better coffee, whatever. It's all relative. Coffee is, well, within a range, I guess, pretty relative. And like a lot of things, it's all about kind of where you started. And Dunkin' Donuts everywhere in New England. It's everywhere now, but in New England, it's like on every corner, kind of like Starbucks is everywhere else. So growing up, my mom went to Dunkin' Donuts all the time. Munchkins are the best. Like, Dunkin' Donuts has a special place in my heart that trying to introduce my kids to. Sausage, egg, and cheese on a croissant. I'll have that for every meal, even though it's, weirdly floppy and moist for some reason. Each time I get it, I don't care. So I'm a huge Dunkin' fan. It's Dunkin' all the way. And that's not to like knock Starbucks or go against Starbucks because it's cool or hip or whatever. This man runs on Dunkin' or Wawa, but Dunkin' is in my blood, I guess, and Wawa's in my pancreas. I don't know. Not important. But I'm Dunkin' man through and through. Although I will tell you, here we go. I did have, so everyone knows about the pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks, and we're in pumpkin spice latte season. However, last year, Starbucks introduced the pumpkin cream cold brew. So pumpkin spice latte usually hot, pumpkin cream cold brew obviously cold. Pumpkin cream cold brew outsold pumpkin spice latte last year, which was crazy. They brought it back. It's amazing. I had one of those the other day. It's like a pumpkin cream milkshake that has coffee in it. So if that was a beer, now we got a competition going on. Now I have some thinking to do, John, because that was a heck of a drink. But I guess I'll stick with my original answer. go with honor my heritage and say, Duncan, brew up some beer, brew up some coffee, let's party, but don't sleep on Starbucks. Pumpkin cream, cold brew coffee beer, maybe in the future, and that's a future I want to live in.
That was kind of my thoughts, is that Starbucks would rule the like adjunct kind of one-off. Like a flat white is the weirdest thing to say to a barista. And I don't even know what's special about it. But whenever my wife says, I'm going to Starbucks, do you want anything? Yeah, flat white. Isn't that just a regular coffee? I don't know. I don't know what makes it unique, but I would order it as a stout as well. Yeah. And if we weren't going to Dunkin' Donuts brewery or Starbucks cidery, where would we be going if we were talking about maybe the best verified venue that you want to shout out this week, Harrison?
Yes, this was fun. Sticking in New England, I discovered the malted barley in Providence. There are 2 locations. Talking about the Providence one, which is actually the second one. And I found it just by being on Berkshire Brewing Company's Untappd brewery page and kind of seeing where people enjoying their beers. And the malted barley popped up again and again. They have a lot of Berkshire Brewing Company stuff on tap. As of recording, they had, listen to this, a Puckalips Wow. Puckalips Wow, which I'm laughing as a fan of Apocalypse Now. Mango pineapple. So this is their like sour beer series I was referring to a little while ago, called Apocalypse Now. The can art's hilarious. Different fruits all the time. So mango and pineapple are ripping through it, and people are enjoying it. But they also have a lot of other great beers, like Pseudo Sue from Calvin Goliath, Dogs and Boats, which was like from Beard Brewing, which is one of those beers, and it came out, people were freaking out about it and standing in line, and now you can find it much easier. So hats off to them for finding something great and running with it. But Fiddlehead, Zombie Dust, so lots of stuff you would hope to see at any great craft beer bar. Also, some limited releases from Narragansett, not just the lager or fresh catch, but they had like a cucumber lime beer on tap. So lots of cool beers going on in the malted barley. So I dug a little bit deeper, wanted to learn, why is it here? What's the history? Turns out the malted barley in Providence was opened by a guy named Ron Collar. He grew up in the former beer capital of the world, which is, according to Ron, I'm imagining, although probably some publication, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm not going to argue. That's a great beer city. So beer capital of the world, Milwaukee. Loved beer his whole life. In college, he worked at a bar that had a lot of imports, like 250 beers from around the world. Drank them all. So he was doing lots of work in college, in class, and after class. Good on you, Ron. I hear you there. And just really enjoyed it and the variety that imports were providing him. And then so about 10 years ago, he was watching the rise in craft beers and noticed the quality was finally kind of catching up with the imports, which got him pretty excited and wanted to open up his own business. So he dusted off the old craft beer bar business plan and set out to do a lot of market research, which John and I are doing right now, and we're always doing. You guys are always doing. It's great. We all have our craft beer bar plan somewhere in some file in our computer, I'm sure. So always good to research that. But he kind of went in Providence, discovered the malted barley in Westerly, so the original malted barley, and realized this is awesome. They had some pretty cool parts of their business. John's talking about in a minute, beyond just the beer. We're going to deal with them and open up his own malted barley in Providence himself. So really cool story. Ron just chasing his college dreams, which is something we should all, strive for, I think. Well, depending on the dream, I guess. This is a good one, though. It's beer related and it's pretzel related. So you did some work on their soft pretzel menu, which I took a peek at in my job at the floor. But these guys, malted barley is no joke. What's happening, John?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, beer is the reason behind this show, and Untappd is a way for us to find and keep track of our beers and connect. But pretzels are important, whether they're hard or soft. This malted barley, what they do is they make their own pretzel dough in house. So, get it. They also stuff their pretzels. So there's no more of an American like Wisconsin thing than a stuffed pretzel. They bake them. So when you get yours, it's like coming straight out of the oven, soft, kind of chewy pretzel inside. But generally speaking, from what I can see by photos and reviews, it's got that little crisp on the outside. Yeah. And then, so I've explained to you an ideal pretzel. And when I say stuffed, I'm talking like bacon cheddar, jalapeno cheddar, mozzarella tomato. Ooh. Like, have fun with your stuffed pretzels, but then they also have an amazing amount of dipping sauces, beer cheese, spin art dip, spicy mustard, hummus, guacamole. Yeah. Yes. There was one that was like apricot butter or some kind of citrus butter, blue cheese. I mean, yeah, I do love beer, but when I can get a mozzarella tomato stuffed beer and have cream cheese frosting to dip it into and just let me be my own fancy, weird adjunct brewer making mistakes with your pretzels that I eat. It sounds amazing.
I know, it really does.
I could imagine me and Harrison, I'd love to go there, and I'd say we would do like a live podcast, but really I just eat myself into a coma.
I know, you just hear us chewing in the microphone, which is not, no one wants to hear that, but I don't know. Well, let us know. We're the pretzel sweats. They get me quick. All the salt, it just purges all the things in my body. Anyway,
but definitely malted barley. If you're in Rhode Island, you could walk from one end to the other in an hour and a half. So, swing by Malted Barley. They have some sick beer on tap. You can check them out on Untappd. You can fly right into Providence, swing by Malted Barley, grab a pretzel. Boom, you've experienced most of Rhode Island. Sounds like the best pretzel menu I've ever heard of. But speaking of best, Harrison, what was the best beer of the week that you've had? That's what I'm excited to hear about.
Yes. And it was a doozy. So I'm always, every year, on the lookout for my next favorite Oktoberfest. I think I found it. Zirkus Fest Oktoberfest from Highwire. So John and I were lucky to once again host the next edition, or the most recent edition, of the virtual beer hunt with Lowe's Foods. And this time we had 3 breweries from the Asheville, NC area on that show: Wicked Weed, Highland Brewing, and Highwire. All the beers were great. I mean, it was so cool the way it was curated, and getting to talk to the brewers, owners. Oscar from Highland's amazing. I mean, if you don't know about him and his story, take some time, look it up. You can also watch that live stream that John and I did on Lowe's Foods website whenever you want to. But anyway, all the beers are great. But the first beer we had was Zirkus Fest Oktoberfest from Highwire, and it was amazing. It was nice. It was amber. It was crisp. It actually won the Great American Beer Festival gold medal, I think, back in 2015. So I'm not the only one who thinks it's great. It's fantastic. And Peter, one of Highwire's brewers that we were speaking with, let us in on a little secret. They actually utilized some honey malt in the grain bill of their Oktoberfest, which is pretty cool. And that adds kind of like, what I was tasting was like a really subtle, like unique graham cracker note for like a second that really, it surprised me. It woke me up. It made me go, what is happening? This is delicious. And it really put that beer over the top. So cool night as always, but that beer really got me excited. And he also let us know that I believe for the first time ever, Highwire is also canning a fest beer. So we've talked about that on other podcasts. Go look it up, the difference between fest beers and Marzens, but they're canning that too. So I'm on the hunt for their best beer and do a little side-by-side comparison, and maybe that'll show up in another best beer of the week. But what about you, John? What did you learn? What did you have? What's happening?
Yeah, a great throwback. That Zirkus Fest was good. I'm waiting for America to have an event that's kind of like able to rival Germany's Oktoberfest. Maybe one day. For me, the best beer of the week comes from Great Lakes Brewing, Lake Erie Monster. Me and my mailman and the Untappd user Loud McLeod were able to share this beer together. But Lake Erie Monster's a longtime stud from Great Lakes. It's a big Imperial IPA, and it's like you get a little bit of that like fruit flavor that you would expect from the hops, but it was also kind of malty. And when I was talking to Brian McCaskey about it, he said, wouldn't it be a really cool thing if Lake Erie Monster fought Rogue's Colossal Claude? And I said, yes, that's a great idea. I can't make the monsters fight, but some of the stats I pulled up on Untappd. Quick rundown before you build your own charts. We've got ABV, Claude coming in at 8.2 with Lake Erie Monster ringing the scales at 9.5.
Ooh, wow.
Then we've got check-in count. Claude pulling up the rear with 12,000 check-ins. He's a new fighter on the scene. Lake Erie Monster owns this 125,000 check-ins.
Whoa, wow.
The rating game is where I think the battle is won or lost, and Claude has a 3.81.
Nice.
The Lake Erie Monster, maybe just a little bit more lore, a little bit more reach, 3.87. So I'm going to give it to Lake Erie Monster, but I would love to see Great Lakes and Rogue create this for us in real life.
Oh, yeah. Or someone else who knows how to animate. That would be pretty cool. And I think you hit the most important kind of notes there for me are that, right, Claude is new. 12,000 check-ins is a ton, but 125,000 is obviously 10 times more. So that's cure, and they're so close in the rating. You wonder a couple years with Claude out there, maybe a tie. I think this does deserve some kind of throwdown. So we'll put that out there in the universe and see what happens, I guess.
Before that happens, as we get ready to wrap this episode, I want to remind everybody listening that if you, for any reason, enjoy me and or Harrison, or you just tapped and want to learn more about some of the backstory and some of the badges and beers, follow us, me or Harrison, but definitely follow Untappd. You can follow them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. They're doing a lot of content, happy hours, meeting with different brewers, having people do quick videos showing off their own beer collection. It's a really cool place to just learn about beer. And thanks for drinking a dark colored beer with us. It's not quite cold yet. I know we did ES recently and pastry stouts in July, but I guess it's always a good time for a dark beer. But what about next week? Harrison, what are we doing next week?
That's right. So next week, grab your favorite local craft beers. Untappd can actually have a new badge coming out that supports your favorite local brewery. We'll tell you more what we mean next week. We're actually going to have a quick chat with Ann Obenchain from the Brewers Association to tell us more about this really cool initiative, supporting local beer, getting out there, supporting your local brewery, as I know we all are. But now you have a badge to earn along the way. So we'll have tons more details about that next week.
Until then,
yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. A little bit left.
Drink local.